Melissa, what are we talking
Yes,
about
Josh.
today? There's some news in the industry. What are we
Yeah.
doing today?
So we've been hearing a lot about VMC on AWS not being around very much longer lately. So I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to just kind of chat about it and give people who might be using VMC on AWS some ideas on what they can do later. I happen to be the practice lead for Azure VMware Solution here at End-to-End Enterprise Architecture. So in my world, we're going to talk a lot about going to AVS and how we can do that.
Awesome. Love it. We love AVS and very glad you're leading the practice. So let's jump into who we are and what we're going to do here. So the end-to-end experience. So at end-to-end, the idea is that we provide the best of the best enterprise and solution architects, which is why the whole team are VMware certified design experts, some people in multiple tracks. So we have about 40 years combined experience at that VCDX level. So, very proud to be working with such great people and in such a great team. And of course, AVS is a very valuable offering. So we went out and got the Azure VMware Solution Master Specialist certification last year when it was released. So that was, I think, October 2023. So, yeah, we're very invested in this. Hence, we have someone like you leading the practice, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of our projects at End-to-End, we kind of take this 6-phase approach to them. So I just want to take a couple minutes and talk about how we run a typical engagement, right? This is what we do day in and day out. We always start with an assessment that's kind of table stakes for us, because I've just always had in my experience, Josh, and maybe you've seen the same thing. Customers might think they have certain requirements, but once you start talking to them and working with them, it turns out their requirements are actually a lot different than what they thought they would be, because they didn't quite understand the scope of their project until they kind of have that third party get in there, start leading workshops, get everybody together and start talking about it. There's a lot of stuff that can sometimes be missed if you head right into the design phase.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first, we're going to do a really strong assessment, get everybody on the same page and understand what we're working with. In this assessment, we'll talk about, it depends on how we're engaged. Sometimes we're engaged for something like an VMC on AWS to an AVS migration. That's going to be something really typical. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of. But sometimes we're brought in because there's issues in the environment, right? Something's not going right, something's up, and they want us to take a look. So we're going to start with that assessment. And a lot of time, we're going to have a lot of really strong recommendations that come out of that now that we've gotten everybody together and taken a nice look at the environment. If a customer chooses to move beyond the assessment phase, which they always do, then we're going to go and do a design, right? And when we say a design, we mean a design. We're going to break it down: conceptual, logical, physical. We're going to do the design work, and then we're going to make sure that the customer and everybody on the teams really understands it. And I think that's a big difference in us, right? We want our customers to understand what the design is and understand what they're getting before we begin that next phase of deployment. Deployment is deployment. We've talked about the solution. We've assessed our requirements. We've designed the solution. Now we're going to deploy it for our customers. I don't want to say simple. I sound weird. I feel weird saying it's simple, but that is one of the more simpler phases, I think, because we put all that design effort up front, right? The deployment process, we've had everything mapped out. We know exactly what we're going to do. We go and we deploy it. After we've done that, we go in and validate it. We make sure everything is working as expected to. If we're using some new technologies for the customer in this kind of phase, the validation phase becomes just really important to start giving them a little bit more experience with any kind of new technologies we bring in. Maybe we bring in a different backup product, and I'm not going to go much further than that. Or maybe we've put something in just to make sure they're really protected by ransomware, and it's not a tool or a technology they're used to. We're going to take the time and make sure they understand everything. Then we're going to do the migrations, another easier phase, right? And why I'm saying some of these are easy, and they're easy for us because we put all that work up front in the assessment and design phase, right? So we come in, we do the migration, and then when everything's said and done, there's an opportunity for optimization. If we're going to, we do all our sizing activities, but sometimes we see that, things are actually running a lot better than we expected. Sometimes we find out we have a lot more capacity, and maybe customers say, can we move up that phase 3 migration now because everything's coming along so well? Can we optimize everything a little bit more? So we'll come in, we'll optimize everything, we'll think everything is performing, make sure everything's performing as expected, which it will be because we've designed everything to do so. And we'll make any kind of changes, right? Maybe sometimes the customers decided they want to go in a slightly different direction. They want to bring in a different workload, or, you know what, we were going to migrate this workload, but we want to move that one later and we have a higher priority. So that's a really good opportunity just to make sure everything is humming along really nicely and basically optimize it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the reasons we do that phase last, sometimes we get questions, why don't we do that first? You absolutely can optimize first. But the environment where the source is may be very different to the destination. Mm-hmm. So if you optimize on the source, your migration might be slightly quicker, things like that. But realistically, we want to optimize most in the end state. So we know exactly how things are working in production. So as part of that, a solution like AVS is so good because we can, oversize day one. We can reserve, say, 10 instances. We can burst with a couple of extra, and then we can scale that back after the migration exercise.
Or I don't want to throw in too much of a spoiler here. You might want to hang on to those instances for something we're going to talk about very soon.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk highlights. What do we like about AVS apart from everything?
Yeah, basically everything. But it's pretty low risk. Look, we're talking about Azure VMware Solution, but at the end of the day, we're going to VMware, and we're VCDXs who have been doing this for a very long time. So if we're talking about a kind of risk perspective, it's a very, very low risk migration, especially when customers are already in VMC on AWS. They're kind of used to the operational model. It's really just a new interface in them for Azure. I happen to like the Azure one better than the AWS one. I'm just kind of throwing out there a little bit. So that's one reason. Very low risk, very easy to do for us. I think we're going to be doing a lot of them. And then why I said you might want to keep those instances around is something that AVS is now offering is price protection for 1, 3, or 5 years. And I know there's a lot of things happening right now with the Broadcom era. And one thing is people kind of getting these renewals and this pricing and not being so happy with it. So you actually have the opportunity to lock in your AVS pricing for 1, 3, or 5 years. Now, when we start talking about that's a huge one, right, Josh?
Absolutely. I think this to me, you've got a great technical solution, great architectural solution, but combining that with a great commercial offering is just a win-win. So yeah, really like that one.
Yeah, and then some Azure hybrid benefits. So when we start talking about some of the benefits, you're going to get the same benefits on AVS as you would in native Azure, right? So you're going to be able to use the licensing you already have in AVS. That's totally cool with Microsoft, which is really nice. I think they've been very welcoming to the AVS solution and the VMware customers as a whole, when maybe some other clouds haven't been. I don't know, maybe. And this is probably one of the one reason I see people picking just Azure as a cloud in general for those free extended security updates. As much as we would like to say we don't have old stuff hanging around the data centers, we usually do, right? So one of the big drivers to Azure is getting that extended update capabilities. And then there's also a lot of professional services subsidies through the Microsoft AMP program, which means that when you work with a partner like us and Microsoft, you're actually not going to see much of a cost at all because we're going to be working with Microsoft kind of on your behalf for that to kind of subsidize that. And in some cases, we've had customers that have a very, very low spend for a very complex, large project. So that's a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of. And like I said, we're a part of that program, so we're able to do that. And then last but not least, I say this because this is actually the thing that really got me interested in AVS ultimately, was the storage aspect of things. I have a long history of storage, and AVS has a wonderful storage partner ecosystem. Beyond using, vSAN in your deployment, you can also leverage external storage from names that we're pretty familiar with, right? Like Pure Storage, NetApp, and Lightbit Labs. So there's lots of options in AVS.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the subsidies are quite surprisingly high, actually. So, for customers who are deploying, production environments, they might have 12 or 18 nodes or 24 nodes, something like that. In a lot of cases, you're only paying for 10 or 20% of the services because the rest is subsidized. So it's actually not only you're getting a great team, obviously you're working with Melissa and the rest of the team here, but it's almost free from a services perspective. Like it's as close to free as you could possibly get.
I think we're making this sound a little too easy, Josh. I'm kind of worried about it.
Yeah, and we're going
to end-to-end experience is a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk us through the host types. I think, one of the things that from a sizing perspective, you want to have flexibility. You want to have a choice in how you deploy things, different nodes for different workloads. And also just depending on the quantity of workloads, one node might be far more efficient to deploy than another. So do you want to run us through the options we have in AVS?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that we take the assessment and the design phase so seriously, because we do actually have a couple options to choose from in AVS. So the AV36P is kind of the standard one. It works for a lot of workloads. We have a lot of customers that only deploy that and absolutely love it. But we also have other servers available where we have it. You can see we have a kind of increase in memory, more processors, more cores, like whatever that workload needs. Like I remember, I have to kind of go back in time a little bit. I remember early in the days of VMware, it was like you were always hit on CPU and memory by the hardware you bought. Like it would go in these eras where no matter what I do, I'm going to be CPU constrained. And then a year later, it's like, oh, great, now we're memory constrained on everything based on the hardware available at the time. As you can see from that list, those days are pretty much over, and we have the ability to pick something with more CPU or more memory if we need to very easily. And again, this is really, really simple to deploy, right? Microsoft's doing all the heavy lifting for something. So if we need to deploy a new cluster for a new workload, it's just a matter and use a different node type. That's totally fine and very easy to do. No matter what node we pick, again, it's VMware under the covers, and it's still going to work as you would expect it to. And when we do a lot of DR as well, you might decide, okay, maybe I want to use the AV36 nodes in DR, something like that. We can get really creative with the solution based on what we kind of uncover in that assessment phase and what we can determine in the design phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing is, over, say, 3 or 5 years, you can do refreshes of AVS host type.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously, if we deploy the AV36P today, very common node, then a new one comes out, we can switch you across. Even though you've reserved those instances, Microsoft will allow you to switch node types within that spend. So yeah, very flexible. Obviously, one of the major advantages of the hyperscaler hypervisor solutions. All right, let's jump in assessments. So let's, do you want to lead this one?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk a little bit about some of the assessment types that we do a lot of here at End-to-End, right? So we've got our kind of general virtualization and business critical app focus assessment. This is probably the most general type. This is what we're doing for most of our customers. They kind of say, hey, look, we need a little help with our environment. We're either doing a migration or we're going to move to AVS, or we have stuff going on and we need help, right? So this is kind of the basic assessment. A VCDX is going to come into the environment. We're going to talk to all the stakeholders. We're going to get everybody on the same page. We're going to review the existing environment to get all the sizing information, come up with the sizing, figure out what kind of risks are in the environment. I think risks are a big one that we tend to uncover a lot of times, like just things that have been overlooked over the years, right? So we'll get all that kind of done, dusted, and documented, so then we can kind of recommend, hey, here's what we should do next. Something that I really want to point out, and I think that's like really, really unique with what we offer here with the end-to-end experience, is that if a customer decides to proceed with the design phase and the rest of the project after the assessment, we're actually going to credit that back to them towards the total cost of the project. So this is a very kind of low risk type of thing, right? We really want to start with that assessment. We talk about how important it is. And again, we're going to credit that back to the customer as we move on. It's really the right thing to do for the customer, just to make sure that everything is going to hum along smoothly later on. You know what they say about assumptions. You know we have to document them as part of the design phase. So we don't want to assume anything at end to end.
Yeah, absolutely right. And of course, networking is such a key component of these type of solutions, of any solution really.
It is. And I kind of feel like when we do start talking about the hyperscaler clouds, that's where things can get a little complicated, right? So It depends on the environment, right? Sometimes we're doing on-prem to hyperscaler. Sometimes we're doing hyperscaler to hyperscaler. I think we're going to be doing a lot of VMC to AVS. So it's really important to get on the right page for networking. I don't want to give the network team a bad name or anything, but if your networking is having issues, you're going to see performance issues, you're going to see other things. So we do have VCDX and Vs on staff who can come in and kind of do that assessment for you. And they're the networking experts. And again, if you start with the networking assessment and choose to proceed with the project, that will be credited back towards the total cost of the project.
Absolutely. And the final one, but certainly not the least important.
Last but not least, right? EUC VDI, we're in that space too, because it runs on a virtualized environment. We're starting to see a trend here, right? As we know, everything runs on VMware. So again, we can kind of come in a VCDX desktop, DT will come in and kind of do these assessments for you. And we're just kind of very briefly talking about these 3 assessments today. That's not to say we don't do more and we can't do more. We absolutely do. Those are some of the most popular. We do a lot with, cybersecurity, ransomware readiness, all that kind of stuff. I do a lot of the security stuff here too. So pretty much anything that a customer would need or be stumbling in or need a little help in that area, we're equipped to kind of come in and just really assess that and design that and move the project along for a really good customer outcome at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in this context, we're talking, VMC on AWS, potentially exit strategies for customers. So whether your workloads are server-based or VDI-based.
We don't care what they are. We'll help you get to Azure. Doesn't matter.
And for those who are not familiar, what is VMware HCX?
Yeah, so VMware HCX is actually a really great VMware tool in the chest where that's basically the VMware tool. And again, this is a tool that's from VMware that we're going to use to do the migrations. We install it in Azure, we install it on-prem or in VMC on AWS, and that's really what's going to facilitate the migrations and simplify everything for us.
Yeah, so really great tool that allows us to go really anywhere to anywhere else. So whether it's on-prem or whether it's VMC into Azure, we've got lots of options there. So yeah, really good tool. So I guess anyone who's wanting to consider their options,
go anywhere.
VMC, HCX is there for us to leverage, and of course, AVS is a great option. So we thought we'd bring this info to you quickly and give you some options.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any questions, thank you very much. And I'm sure you know how to find Josh and I on Twitter for anything that you need to follow up on.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing from everyone and helping you with your migrations. Thanks very much, Melissa.
Thank you, Josh.